Alright, and hello everybody, I'm the Sweeper27 and welcome to another Dokkan Battle video. So now that the brand new Super Saiyan Trio, as well as the Carnival Broly has been out for a few days on both versions of the game, I wanted to go ahead and throw my hat into the ring and make a top 10 LR list. Now this list will specifically be for the global side of the game, so if you're wondering where AGL Jiren is, I haven't experimented with the unit. He seems to be very, very good. His support is really good. He has a really good standby, but I haven't been able to experience the character. I haven't been able to bring him as a friend unit or anything of the such, so I don't really want to comment too hard on how good I think he is. So this is specifically just going to be global, and also for like the global meta. Obviously, we don't have like a unit like Goku and Frieza. We don't have to worry about that fight or anything, so this will just kind of be like the global side of things until we get fully caught up at the start of next year. So with that out of the way, I do also want to say one more thing, as this goes with any tier list. We can move any unit up or down a few spots, and I'm really not going to fight you too much. Unless you think, like, who I have at number 10 is number 1, I'm really not going to disagree with your list. So let me know down in the comment section below if you agree with my placements, or if you think any of my placements are kind of whack or anything. But without all that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive in with who I think is the 10th best unit, that being Evoken. So, what does Evoken really provide to the team? Well, he offers a lot. He is one of, if not the best, Rainbow Orb Changer in the entire game. You just need one other superhero category ally on the team. Superheroes is probably still the best team in the game, just in terms of everything. Like, obviously, every Universe 7 character is on the category. You have Beast Gohan, you have Gogeta. It's just so top-heavy, and even some of the TURs are pretty decent as well, so it's super easy to get this. You can only run, like, this unit, one other superhero unit, to get this ability, and then you could run them on some completely other setup, for example. Now, this is a character who generally likes to get their own Rainbow Orbs, because they get extra ki per Rainbow Orb, and then they also get crit chance, damage reduction, and they can launch up to 3 additionals within the turn if they get the 3 orbs. Now, the 3 orbs is just for this. Obviously, if you give them more Rainbow Orbs, they can get more crit and more damage reduction, but most of the time when you're using this character, at least from my experiences, this isn't the most necessary. You can give them just one Rainbow Ki Sphere, and they will still be relatively decent, because if you're running them for their super attack effect, which is right here. I think that these guys are probably one of, if not the best, debuffer in the game when it comes to their super attack effects, because we have so many big bosses nowadays that launch 3 million plus supers, 1 million plus normals, but to counteract that, we are able to debuff them, whether it be offensively or defensively. And when you have a unit who creates his own orbs, can potentially launch multiple of these supers within a turn, all of which are able to just greatly cut down the damage that we would be taking, protecting weaker units on the team, doing more damage if we're able to actually lower their defense as well. These guys also have a very crazy turn, potentially. I mean, it's only once per battle, but they do have this in their back pocket, as well as this pretty, I mean, it's a decent active skill. You kind of use this only if you ever want to, like, finish the fight, that rotation. It's not that great overall, but these guys are just so solid. You're able to float them very effectively, or you can keep them on a main rotation, and you're really not going to be missing out on much value regardless. Now, they do lose a little bit of their value with some of these fights that you cannot debuff. There are several of these long fights, like Goku and Frieza, for example. I don't think that you can debuff them when they are Goku and Frieza. I think you can only offensively and defensively debuff them when they are Gohan and Frieza, and then only offensively when 17, and then I think Golden Frieza and 17, I don't think you're able to debuff them at all. So they are a little bit less effective once you get into some of these fights where you lose out on their main ability. But if you're using them, you are using them for this, as well as just the utility from the orb changing. They are incredibly solid. They're a very versatile unit. Pretty much the only thing they can't do is go into slot 1, but that doesn't even matter because with all the teams that they're on, they have plenty of slot 1 units, and these guys are probably on some of, like, the widest range of great teams. Like, Universal Survival Saga is great. Pure Saiyans, once he gets a leader, will be great. The same thing with Power Beyond Super Saiyan. I know we have AGL Vegito, and I have run him as a leader in some of these more difficult events, but it is a little bit scary having to float a character like that because he's just not good enough to stay in a main rotation, but you could theoretically get away with that. Same with Kamehameha. Kamehameha, once it gets a good 200%, probably like when the 7-year anniversary LR is EZA next year, that's when Kamehameha is going to become like really relevant again. These guys are going to be crazy. Realm of Gods, I mean, it's certainly fallen off pretty hardcore core. Like, Fusion Zamasu isn't what he used to be. Full power is really good because you have Broly. Powerful comeback is pretty decent. And then Joint Forces, Bond of Parent and Child, Reps of U7, Superhero, Tournament Participant, All Out Struggle. These 4 teams right here pretty much just define, like, the meta right now. These are, like, probably the 4 best teams in the game. And several of the other categories up here could potentially be in the runnings for top teams also. They just need a good leader. But yeah, I feel like this is a very versatile unit, very, very good, and I feel very comfortable putting them in the number 10 spot. Now, number 9 might be a little bit controversial, but I'm going to put Gogeta here, and it'll make a little bit more sense why I'm putting Gogeta here once we see the number 8 spot. If you asked me a little while ago, I would have said that this unit probably was better than AGL MUI, because once he transformed, they were both dodging units, but this guy had the versatility of also having pretty much the best Rainbow Key Sphere changing in the game. It was just unconditional. The only thing that it was a part of it is that it wouldn't change physical orbs, but at the start of every single turn, this unit, you know, he has the Rainbow Orb changing. He guards for his first couple of turns, and then once you transform, you get the insane amount of HP recovery. I think it's 54% for 4 turns. Where is that at? Right here. Yeah, 54% at the start of the attacking turn for 4 turns for this character's entry turn. So there's just so much utility on this character, but this is why I'm putting them so much up here, and I think that they've kind of fallen from grace. I spent pretty much all day today and last night just running all these units in a bunch of different events to see how they all performed, and Gogeta is the unit who died the most. And the reason for that is just because his base form, it's fraudulent. It's not great. Like right here, he does have very low stats at the start of turn. I know he makes up for it with this, but still, I'm not a huge fan of when units don't have a 2 at the start of this. Pretty much this year, every major unit, or we've seen the power creep of these units, 200% at the start of turn is kind of becoming the bare minimum, in my opinion at the very least. I don't care if they make up for it elsewhere in their passive. I would like to see this be 200%, so that does kind of hold it against him a little bit. And outside of that, he just has Guard as his defensive mechanic for his first couple of turns. Now, I know you are able to do the strategy where if you just have him turn 1, you float him, and then by the time he comes back around, you're able to transform him. But when you're running him on his team, which is Movie Heroes is one of the best teams in the game, but I feel like one of the worst things about running Movie Heroes is running 2 Gogetas, because you run into the situations all the time where you have them both in turn 1, and you have to keep one onto a main rotation, and even though he does stack defense in his base form, he's just very, very squishy. He can take a lot of damage against normals. He cannot go into slot 1. He doesn't really offer anything in this base form outside of just the orb changing, where pretty much the number 10 spot does the exact same thing, except they also have those incredible debuffs as well, and they also have the potential to do way more supers in a turn. I'm not saying that his base form is bad. It's just certainly starting to feel the pressure very, very hardcore of all the new events and all the units around him. Like, his base like this doesn't compete at all with a lot of the other units that we'll be seeing. But he does just massively rock it up once we transform into this. It's very easy to do so. It is just turn 4 from his first appearance. So you don't have to be stuck in that base form for too long, but the base form certainly can get caught. Again, through all of my testing that I've done, base Gogeta has actually been the unit on this list that has died the most often. But Gogeta, once you go blue, you just pretty much essentially, I don't want to say you win the fight, but the fight becomes a lot more comfortable. See, right here, now he's at that threshold that I like to see, 200 at the start of turn. He still has the super effective against all types. He gets that extra stats right here when he performs a super. He's still having pretty much the best Rainbow Orb changing in the game. He has an additional super right here. Launched an additional once you give him just 1 orb, which is super easy to do. After he dodges 5 times, he has the guaranteed crits for the rest of the fight. He has this nullification right here, which some of the major bosses are actually, beam supers, like Broly in the Red Zone movie boss rush, for example. He's a unit who launches a Ki Blast super. I'm trying to think of some other major ones right now. I can't think of any off the top of my head. I mean, Tech 17, I suppose, in the Goku and Frieza fight, his would be a beam super, but again, Global doesn't have that. So, global players really aren't getting the most usage out of this at the moment, but it is nice to have, especially on a 70% chance of it to happen, and this does just do a lot of damage. His super attack effects are pretty good as well, massively raising attack for 4 turns is kind of crazy. His damage can go through the roof if you keep him on the main rotation, although this is a unit who I generally like to float, unless I have to put him into slot 1 for whatever reason, like my rotation doesn't have a good slot 1. He can go slot 1 just because he is a generic 70% chance to dodge character, unless you do his active skill, which right here is probably the best target all mechanic in the game. where he temporarily massively raises his attack and does ultimate damage to the enemy, and then he gets guaranteed dodge, and he gets the attack all mechanic, all at the same time. So you'll be taking 0 damage. If you haven't fully built this up, you put him in slot 2 or 3, you will be guaranteed building this up. So for the rest of the fight, he has the guaranteed dodges, or excuse me, the guaranteed crits right there on his guaranteed dodge turn. And again, his damage just goes through the roof once you're able to perform that. And the condition is just his next attacking turn, so you don't really have to wait too long for this team protection ability to proc. He's on just a billion teams. Again, a lot of them are very top tier. You have superheroes, you have movie heroes. Super Saiyans is very, very good. Transformation Boost is very, very good. All these teams are very good, but those are the ones that just have like the best leader skills at the moment. He has just a generic link set as well, so I do feel pretty comfortable putting him here just because, again, his base form is what is holding him back. If he had just like a little bit of extra stats right here, or maybe from like his first appearance, he also had like maybe a little bit of damage reduction, or he just offered a little bit more than this, because the payoff is certainly worth it. And it's not very common that you're going to see this guy die, but if we're comparing this base form to several other base forms on the video, or again, my own experiences, how many times this unit has died on turn 1, 2, or 3, when right now, not a lot of these fights outside of like Cell Max and Evoken, Stage 1 really isn't that difficult, if I'm being completely honest. In a lot of these fights, being good at the start of fights is good, but global, we don't have too many fights that actually pressure you turn 1. And turn 1, this is a unit who just falters in a lot of instances. So you do kind of got to work to get the really good payoff, but he does have like a very high ceiling, so I think putting him here at number 9 does kind of make sense. Now this one might be a little bit controversial. I'm not entirely sure. I'm putting Broly above Gogeta. I feel like this is a very uncommon, unpopular opinion, but I feel like I can kind of rationalize it right now. Now I do want to preface this, I don't have Broly in my box. I have been able to use Broly a lot by using Rose as my leader and then bringing a friend Broly. So I do have a very good idea of how this guy works, what he does, all of his performance in a lot of different situations, slot 1, slot 2, floating him, how his domain works. I do feel like even though I don't personally have him, I do have a pretty good idea. So, number 1, let's just get this out of the way. This is probably one of the best, like, just generic link sets in the game right here. Super Bosses, it's certainly a lot better now with the introduction of Cell Max. It is very, like, heavy on big bad bosses or super class characters. So Broly not having big bad bosses or some of these other links so he can link with, like, Topo, Jiren, Kefla, some of these units, he's not, like, he is, like, the best Super Bosses leader, probably. I've probably changed my tune a little bit, saying that he's better than Rose in terms of leading this specific category, but you do run into some of those issues where you're not able to, like, link the best, get activated to the best link in the game, or just not have some of them, like, these generic link sets, or some of these more niche sets where you're able to link really well with, like, Topo in slot 1, this unit in slot 2. You're not going to get a lot of links activated on that. But Transformation Boost, this is probably just, like, the best generic category in the game. It covers so many different units, and then Full Power covers a lot of, like, the big powerhouses of the game, and then Exploding Rage and Movie Bosses isn't half bad either. So this unit has, like, his base form kind of struggles from the same thing as Gogeta, where you're really not offering a lot, but I would argue this unit offers, like, his base form is better than Gogeta's base form. Now, you're stuck in this base form for a little bit longer, because it is the 5th turn from this unit's first appearance, as opposed to Gogeta's 4th turn. So if you floated this unit, by the time they would come back around, you would still have to have at least 1 turn of this Broly right here before you're able to transform, and he does have the domain issue. So if you're running 2 of this Broly on the team, you can only have 1 of them transformed into the full power form at any given time. So he does have some issues as well being a leader. But that's just the thing with Super Bosses right now. When we have this unit, we have Rose, we have Zamasu, all these units who are super dependent on getting their domain transformations. Their domain effects don't even necessarily matter so much. It's just the transformations that really do. But so many of these units, we can't have multiple domains until the update happens, that it's just going to be an issue. Once that issue gets resolved, though, I feel like Broly stocks are going to go through the roof. Because, again, he has a very good leader skill, and once you transform, you get insane value. But I would actually argue that even though you're stuck in this base form for a little bit longer, you do get more value out of this base form than what you do from Gogeta. Because Gogeta, he's really only offering the Rainbow Orb changing, which is still really good, I don't want to underestimate how good Rainbow Orb Changing is, but this unit just gives you an insane amount of damage. So if we're looking down here, he actually stacks attack on his 12 key, and then he greatly stacks attack on the 18 key, and he raises defense for 4 turns. So he can become pretty decently tanky up against normals. Supers can certainly get this guy caught, but under certain circumstances, he should be able to live like some of like the mid-tier super bosses attacks, like 17 in the Goku Frieza fight. Again, I know I'm just mentioning that fight a bunch, but like that fight right there, that is a 1.7 billion. If this unit is able to super attack first in slot 2 or 3, he will actually be able to tank that through his guard and just how high his defense is actually able to get to. But again, I do just think that's a little bit better than what Gogeta's offering. You're doing good damage. You're able to like really quickly move through a lot of these events because of this unit. Now that can sometimes be an issue. Doing too much damage can certainly happen, but I do just think that this offers a little bit more than what Gogeta's offering. Plus, I do believe that this unit tanks a little bit better than what Gogeta's actually able to offer. And then we have his domain. So again, once he transforms 5th turn from his first appearance, he creates the domain. This gives extreme class allies 4 ki for 4 turns. And then the domain field effect is actually quite good as well. Extreme class allies and enemies get 10% attack and defense, plus an additional 10% attack and defense for those who are on Exploding Rage or movie bosses. And then super class allies take an extra 10% damage. So let's look at what Transformed Broly is doing. This is probably the most impressive offensive unit in the game, even still. And it gets just a little bit better once we look down here, who is now his best linking partner. 6 out of 7 links, including Shocking Speed, which is a little bit of defense right there. This unit, I feel like, again, his stocks go through the roof because he now has a perfect linking partner. You put Tech Broly slot 1, this unit slot 2, whoever your floater is, and I can almost assure you, you're killing a boss in 1 turn. Broly is insane. 300% to stats at the start of the turn. He has the guaranteed guard. For his first couple of turns, he has the extra damage reduction. So he gets 52% damage reduction and 52% chance to crit in total, which is really, really good. Getting a guaranteed super when ki is 24. He's just solid. He's just like the best damage dealer. Again, he's not like the best tanking unit. He can't really like fulfill the role of slot 1, which used to be a little bit of an issue until, you know, the introduction of Cell Max and then the introduction of this brand new Broly. I feel like a lot of pressure has been taken off of this unit's back so he can do what he does best, which is just go into slot 2 and do an insane amount of damage and pretty much kill any fight before it even has a chance to like really get going. I would say that, again, his stocks have just gone through the roof. He does also have an AoE, so if we get any difficult fights that have multiple enemies, like, deep into these fights, having this unit and the other Broly being able to launch 2 AoEs on a turn, potentially Cell Max, if you're floating Cell Max on that team, you could have 3 really powerful AoEs. I would actually be really interested to see a fight with multiple enemies, so we could actually get some major advantage of the movie bosses teams launching out all these big, powerful AoEs, with all their different abilities. But yeah, I feel like he's just really good. Again, not meant to be a tank. I don't know how well this form would be able to tank supers, but I would imagine not too bad. Because, again, he has guard right here, pretty high stats, all things considered. He's launching a bunch of additionals as well. He's getting the extra buff from his domain. Plus, he's supporting his whole team and rotation by doing so. Right here, what is it? 26% chance to crit when performing an 8. Oh, excuse me, I was wrong. So he only has the 26% damage reduction, but he can get the 52% chance to crit. I was wrong. Alright. So he probably still would take a lot of damage from a super. I don't think that changes my placement of him at all. I think I would still keep him above Gogeta just because now he has the perfect linking partner. His teams are just getting better. He can now just do exactly what he was designed to do. And once the domain update gets updated, I mean, he could potentially skyrocket up the positions. But for right now, I think that is a pretty safe place to put him. Now, who did I put next? Oh, yeah, this is probably going to be another controversial one. I'm putting Tech MUI all the way at number 7. So, Tech MUI is probably, again, one of the better leader skills in the game just because Universal Survival Saga is just a subsection of superheroes, but you also get access to characters like Toppo and Jiren. Some of these other super stupidly powerful characters who just, like, run through the game. But from my experience and what I've seen from a lot of footage is that this unit isn't always as cracked up as he's meant to be. So he does have the 200% to stats at the start of turn. That is what I like to see. He does get some extra buffs at the start of turn thanks to his intro. He is a 70% chance to dodge unit in his base form. And he does have this little mechanic where if he fails a dodge, he's very tanky for his first time that he fails it. And then after that, he just gets guard. So 15% damage reduction and guard the second or third time or fourth, fifth, however many times he gets hit within the turn. And then before that, he has, what is it, 50% damage reduction? Essentially, yeah, alright. But his base form, again, it's nothing too impressive in my opinion. The damage really isn't there. He is giving some decent support, I will say, though, on his super attack effects. Because on the 12 key, he raises allies' attack for 1 turn, and then on the 18 key, he's giving them all 30% defense. So he is a nice slot 1 supporting unit who has a very good leader skill, obviously, but there are a few things that kind of hold this character back. Number 1, his damage isn't that impressive. Number 2, if he does get caught multiple times within the turn, which is rare, but it has happened to me a lot. This is one of the dodging units who I've had very, very, very bad luck with him dodging. This unit has died a lot for me in recent time. But like, that just happens. It's 1 in 0s. Stuff's gonna happen. There are units who can't live. This unit has a 70% chance to live, but he's just been frauding those 70% for me. But again, this is just like the case of a base form that really isn't offering too much, and it does run into the issue this is another domain character. So if you're running 2 UI Gokus, you can only have one of them in the God mode at any given time, which does suck, but this unit probably has one of the best domains in the game. So the condition right here is 5th turn from start of turn. So if you get this unit in slot 7 and you're only running one of them, you're going to be getting that domain super late into the fight, which can potentially be worrisome, or if he gets like floated off in the Goku Frieza fight because of a lock. Because this is a domain you need for some of the fights, which I'm not a big fan of. I'm not a big fan of that design that Dokkan does, where you need a certain unit or a certain ability to perform super well in like this new fight, otherwise you're just going to be kind of screwed. I'm not a big fan of that design. I've been on the record saying that multiple times, but his domain is quite good. So, once he transforms, all superclass allies get 4 ki for 3 turns, which is super good. And then the effect of the domain is superclass enemies and allies get 15% attack and defense, plus an additional 15% attack for those who are also on Realm of Gods. And then superclass allies and enemies are able to nullify the guaranteed to get hit mechanic. So in these fights that have dodge nullifying abilities, UI just says no you, and then that also gets rid of it. But this is also pretty important. If you have an ability that guarantees you to hit, that also gets rid of it. Like if you're running Int Yamcha, for example, the turn that you use his active skill, he does get the guaranteed to hit mechanic. That wouldn't work. So if you're going up against a dodging enemy, you pop that active skill. If this domain is up, the enemy can still technically dodge Yamcha during that turn. So it's not the most common thing to happen, and it only affects superclass allies. I didn't know that. If I'm being honest, I just thought it was all. So if you brought like Broly, Chile, and Limo on like a lineup with this character, like Pure Sans, for example, and Broly, Chile, and Limo got the 7 orbs, if they were in a dodge nullifying fight, they could still get hit. So it's not as good as I would have first thought then, but let's be real, who's running Broly, Chile, and Loser? That unit. That's a unit who's died a lot of times. Yeah, I wonder where they'd be on the... I mean, they're still like top 20, but that's a unit who frauds me a lot. But this is, yet again, another unit who has, once you transform, you go into God mode. 300% the stats at the start of turn, that is what I love to see. He gets a lot better for his first turn. He does also give dodging support to all allies by 10%, which doesn't sound like a lot, but already having so many units, like, I believe that this is like a stack. So if you have AGL MUI, for example, who has a 77% chance to dodge unit, he's actually an 87% chance to dodge unit at the start of turn because of his transformation. And again, if you're in one of these fights that nullify dodge, you just say no you to that, which is incredible. And then this unit has some insane levels of buildup. He gets 3 ki up to 12, and then chance to crit and dodge plus 20% up to 77% with each attack performed, which is insane. He has counters against anything that he dodges, and he has the guaranteed dodge on his first turn. So essentially, you're just going to be countering everything that this guy does. He has just a buffed ability from what he has in his base form, so the first time in a turn he gets caught, he should be able to eat it very well. And then after that, you'll still take some damage if you get caught again, but it won't be like super major, or at least it's not supposed to be. He gets, you know, an additional super when he is 24. He's just very good overall. Although there is one thing about this unit that is a little bit upsetting. In the brand new Goku and Frieza fight, a fight that this unit is designed for, without support, he's not able to cross the HP threshold unless he does a bunch of supers beforehand, and then his counters are able to do damage. So hypothetically, let's say you transform this guy, there's 4 attacks before he can attack, and then there's 3 attacks after he can attack, for example. All those counters he does beforehand will do nothing to the boss. His super attack effects will do nothing to the boss, but the counters thereafter will be able to do damage to him. So even though he does do an insane amount of damage, now that we have this wall mechanic, this damage HP threshold mechanic, probably my least favorite mechanic in the game, just because it makes so many units invalid. I just think it's dumb. This is a brand new summonable unit who, again, without support, with support he can cross it. A unit who we'll talk about later on this list can actually help push him to that threshold, but he is just lacking a little bit in terms of offenses, which is kind of crazy to think about a unit who has 77% chance to crit, and you know he has essentially guaranteed counters, basically guaranteed counters, and he's launching like well, not a 15 million, like several 13 to 14 millions in a turn, and he can't cross certain HP threshold, so hopefully that's a mechanic that we will see less and less of instead of more and more of. But overall, he is still very, very good. But if, again, he does get caught, the first time you should be fine. I have had him die a few times in the past by a super attack when he does have the 60% damage reduction. So he's not the tankiest guy out there, but he's not supposed to really rely on his defense. He's supposed to rely on his dodge. So 23% of the time, this unit can get you caught. The rest of the time, he's just going to be dodging. He's going to be doing very solid damage to the team. And then his domain, obviously, it just nullifies some toxic mechanics that the bosses have. But even on, like, Reps of Universe 7, I do just think that there's some other units who outclass him in a lot of ways, both in terms of damage and utility. So we'll actually talk about one of those right now. Up next, we have SSBE. Let's see if we can pull him up right here. So SSBE is one of these units who, again, if you asked me like a month or two ago, I would have said that he's actually better than AGL MUI, because this is a character who sacrifices like ceilings necessarily, or I don't know if a ceiling is the correct word to say, but he just is more consistent as opposed to being able to do way more explosive things. And what do I mean by that? So if we have the 200% to stats right here, he gets an extra 7 key and guaranteed guard for his entry turn. But this right here is pretty huge. Launch is just a guaranteed additional that has a 77% chance of it being a super attack. You can go back and look at any of my gameplay videos. AGL MUI misses this attack all the time, so he'll just do one super in a turn and then that's it. And I hate that. He does have 50% damage reduction baseline. He gets an extra 10% up to 30 with each time he gets hit in a turn. He does get extra attack and defense and key support each time that he does get hit. What is this right here? An extra 77% attack and performs crit when activating his active skill or when his key is at 24. And he does have a very reliable revive, but it's not the best revive in the game. Because if you're getting his revive, it's normally deep into a fight when you don't necessarily need it. The next unit who we'll talk about on this list, whenever his his revive happens, I feel like number one, it happens more often, and two, it happens when you're in dire situations. Like if this character gets hit 4 times when you enter the attacking turn with 7% HP, you're going to die that turn, you know what I mean? So even though the condition seems to be easy, getting hit 5 times isn't always the most consistent until you get deeper into these fights. And again, by that point in the fight, you might not need it, or another revive might happen. On paper, this seems very easy to activate, but I haven't seen his revive as much as I have some other units. But when a unit on the team revives, he gets 7 key and 77% to stats, and then if he's the specific unit who is revived, he gets guaranteed guard for his next turn. So he's just so good. He can fulfill the roles of slot 1, slot 2, slot 3, so you can float him if you need to, you can put him into slot 1 under certain circumstances. Now obviously if he has like the guard and 50% damage reduction, yeah, hell yeah, put him into slot 1. Other instances, just 50% damage reduction and 200% defense, he can get caught. But if he gets hit 3 times and then there is a super, I mean 80% damage reduction, 200% to stats, he's not going to be taking a lot of damage at all in that instance. So there are some times where putting him into slot 1, he will be safe. There are other times he can get caught. That's just how this game works. His super attack effects are really, really good. He gives the crit support to all allies for 1 turn on both the 12 and 18 key. If you miss, like if you give him 23 key and he launches a super, he is still essentially guaranteed critting because he has this ability right here. So as long as you launch 1 super, all of his attacks for the rest of the turn will be guaranteed crits. But if you get him to 24 key, you don't even need to worry about that anyway. His active skill, I mean, it's fine. It is an AoE, so it's not going to do, like, the most amount of damage, but again, if we get a fight that has multiple enemies, we could potentially get some usage out of that. He does have a costume change, which is pretty cool. They put this on all of 2 characters and then immediately got rid of the mechanic and just turned it into, like, morale boosts or standbys or just passive transformations, so it's him and Videl, I think, are the only 2 units who actually have just outright costume changes, but I don't know, I think it's kind of nifty, and they can maybe go back and mess with the mechanic a little bit. I mean, I guess they technically have with, like, standbys and stuff, but you guys know what I mean. You guys know what I mean. But this is just like the most consistent unit in the game, I would argue. Like turn 1 is his best turn, obviously, and if he revives, his revive turn is just essentially his turn 1, just with a little bit extra. But he does on turn 3 what he's going to do on turn 55. Very little buildup. I mean, yes, he does have to do some attacks right here, but that doesn't really necessarily matter. You put this guy to slot 2, he is essentially untouchable. I don't think I've ever had this guy specifically die on me when in slot 2 or slot 3, just because he does get the really high stats right here, greatly raising defense right here, and then greatly raises attack and defense right here. Obviously, he's giving the crit support for 2 turns on the 18 key as well. He's on just a bunch of very powerful teams, including like the best teams of the game, Universal Survival Saga, Reps of Universe 7, Superheroes. You can run him on full power Broly's team because of this. You can run him on a couple of other units on this team that we'll discuss in a moment because he's on things like All Out Struggle. So his categories are just insane. He is insane. He is just, again, probably the most consistent unit that we will be talking about today. And that's why I feel very comfortable putting him there. But every now and then you got to play a little bit risky. And that's where AGL MUI comes in. So AGL MUI is designed in a very similar function, but instead of being, you know, more consistent, he has the ability to essentially be the best unit in the game. Like, they gave him a stupid ability. Like, it's stupid. So his first turn, he has guaranteed dodge, which is insane, by the way. He has a 77% chance to launch an additional super. I fail this literally all the time. It's insane. AGL MUI is one of these units who also frauds me. It's not as bad as Int Gotenks, but it's quickly coming there. I've died several times due to this guy not dodging. I still haven't gotten the legendary 98% chance to dodge and failed. Still hasn't happened yet. I have failed a couple of 91% though. I have failed a couple of 91%. A 9% chance to die, and I lose it, which is insane. But this is right here. So at the start of turn, just baseline, he has 77% chance to dodge. But with each attack dodged performed within the turn, he gets an extra 7%. So a long time ago, like again, if you asked me this a little while ago, I would have said SSBE would have been here instead, because we thought that this was like a 77% chance to dodge and then like a 14% chance to dodge, and then you had a potential system. These actually stack. So the first time he dodges, he actually has an 84% chance. After that is a 91. After that, it is a 98. And then after that, he has guaranteed dodge. I don't know how they're going to make a better dodging unit than this. I think if they do, it is a mistake, because he's already so good. This unit will pretty much be good for forever, just because 23% of the time he won't fraud you out, and then that chance just gets lower and lower and lower as the fight goes on. Even once his damage stops becoming competitive, he will still actually have a usage in the meta just because he is so reliable. It's insane. I really do think that they messed up when designing him. He's honestly too good. This is another unit who can go into literally any slot. You can put him in a slot 1, you can put him in a slot 2, you can float him. He's just very versatile with what he does in his kit. He also does have a little bit of build up right here where you can get an extra 10 key and 150% attack and 150% defense with each attack evaded. So this is a little bit harder to build up because, you know, sometimes the boss, if they're just not attacking this unit a lot, you're not going to get this super easily, but I mean, stuff happens. He also gets the extra 77% attack when he is at 24 or when launching the active skill. And this is probably the best revive in the game because it always shows up when you need it, not when you want it. So if you just enter the attacking turn with 77% or less HP, this character revive is up. Any unit on that rotation ends up dying. You will revive with 77% HP. He gets the extra buffed up stats when any unit on the team revives. And if this is the unit who specifically revives, you get yet another guaranteed dodge turn. He is so solid. He's so incredibly powerful. On his super attack effects, he doesn't get any defense, but he is just doing like insane levels of damage, so it doesn't necessarily matter too much. Again, if you miss the 24 key, you just launch one super. All the rest of the attacks throughout the turn are going to be guaranteed crits. He is giving the crit support right here as well, potentially for 2 turns if you give him the 18 key. And his active skill is pretty much just definitively better than what SSBE's is, because it's only a single target, greatly raises attack temporarily and does ultimate damage to the enemy, and it has the exact same condition, can be activated when HP is 50% or more, starting from the 4th turn from the start of battle. So you can launch that pretty much whenever you want. There are very few instances where you enter a turn and you're not able to either heal up enough to be able to launch this, or you're just not already above the threshold where you're able to rock it right away. Very, very powerful unit, very, very consistent. So that's why it's kind of crazy that I'm putting him this low on the tier list. All right, so we only have 4 spots left, and this one might be a little bit controversial as well. I'm not entirely sure. I actually did some off-screen summons. I know, shame on me, but after spending about 300 stones, I got my copy of Cell Max. So this is just speaking through the lens of someone who's using him at 55%. However, I feel like Cell Max isn't always what he's cracked up to be. So, when he first debuted, I really did think that if you thought that this unit was better than Beast Gohan, I didn't necessarily agree with it, but I understood it. There's two critical flaws within this guy that make me feel much less comfortable running him as a total, as opposed to Beast Gohan. So he only has 3 God turns. So when he enters the turn, he gets an extra 100 to stats, guaranteed guard, and launches a guaranteed additional that has a 50% chance of being a super, as long as you have Artificial Lifeform, Super Bosses, or Super Bosses category ally on the team upon the entry turn. So that's really not too hard to activate. You pretty much just run him in one of his 2 teams, and you're able to get that right away. He has 300 stats at the start of turn. You know, obviously he gets built up with each attack performed and each attack received. And then he gets this right here, an extra 250% defense and 30% damage reduction when you have a full rotation of either Artificial Lifeform, Super Bosses, or Movie Bosses, and an additional 250% attack and crit as long as you're not running him with any super class allies. And then if he gets targeted by a super attack, he launches a guaranteed additional super. So that's pretty good right there. His super attack effects, I mean, they're fine. Like, he just gets attack on both, which isn't necessarily the best. He does have an AoE that is a debuff on the 18 key, which is actually pretty huge. So again, if we get a hard fight that has like 3 enemies, like potentially whenever we get more of the movie stages, like we'll get one against like the brand new Broly Trilo. Instead of it being like a standalone unit, if we could just get like a Goku, Gohan, and Trunks unit, and they all potentially launch like 2 million supers, this would be one of the better units in the game, because not only would you do damage to all of them, but you'd be debuffing all of them as well. I mean, this 12 key, I mean, it literally doesn't do anything outside of damage, which is fine. This is one of the more damaging units in the game. But, so, the first flaw against him is, again, 3 turns is like, I mean, that's good, but I would much rather that be 5 turns, because a lot of the time, the start of the fight, there aren't too many that pressure you right away. And then the other thing that really holds him against, or that I hold against him, is actually his active skill. Again, it's still very, very good. It's an attack all mechanic. It protects the team. But the conditions are, you can do it on turn 4 if you're running Artificial Lifeform or Super Bosses, or just a full Extreme Class rotation from turn 6. So I've been running a lot of movie bosses, right? Obviously having like dual Broly lead. So there have been a lot of instances where I've had this unit on turn 5, he doesn't have his intro up, and 30% damage reduction even with all his stats. He can get cooked. He can. Again, this is just 55% speaking, but I have used him as a friend lead before I actually ended up just pulling him or whatever. Like, his damage is insane, and in these first couple of turns, he can obviously go into slot 1, get his hits in right away, get built up very, very quickly, and then again, he can protect the team. This is probably the second best target all mechanic in the game. It's much better than Beast in my opinion, because it also does the immense amount of damage, and then he just gets this ridiculous amount of defense for 1 turn. The issue with this, though, is like you can still get stunned or sealed, so like, let's say you get hit by a super attack, but it's a guaranteed stun. I mean, he's not getting any benefits out of this, or if it's a seal, you're just launching a bunch of additional normals, which can, you know, still do some damage, because he does have, like, the built-in crit right there, but, I don't know, he's just not, like, the perfect slot 1 unit that I thought he was. There were a lot of instances where I've actually had to put him into slot 2, and even float him. Now, again, that could just be because he's 55%, but when I'm looking at this kit just screams slot 1. He's not really giving any support anywhere. And like, he's supposed to be so good in his passive that he doesn't technically have super attack effects. I know, again, he has the debuff right here, but he only gets 1 debuff per turn. It's not like Evokin, where you can launch a billion of these in 1 turn and greatly lower the enemy's attack and defense multiple times. You can still technically do that once during the fight, though, so I do have to give him credit where credit's due. I wish he maybe did the same on his 12 key. I would definitely be singing a different tune. They kind of gave him the same abilities that they did Int Kid Gohan during the 8th anniversary, where, like, I guess they thought his 18 key, where he gets 30% damage reduction and greatly stacks attack and defense, would be too powerful. So they basically made him launch a bunch of additionals, but his additionals is just greatly raise attack for 1 turn. Doesn't make the biggest difference in the world. I mean, at Rainbow status, I've also seen this character get cooked, so I'm not comfortable putting him in the number 2 slot anymore, especially now that I've gotten some experience under my belt wielding him. He is still quite good, obviously, but he doesn't lock down slot 1 the way that I thought he would. And obviously, like, villains do definitely need the help, but kind of restricting him in this way is a little bit weird, because he can be effective on 3 teams, that being Artificial Lifeform, Super Bosses, or Movie Bosses, and he is definitely, like, the best Super Bosses character, and one of the best Movie Bosses characters. But not having Movie Bosses activate his passive, like, you just have to run one other, so this could obviously be DBS Broly, or this could be Broly Chilean Limo, this can be Int Golden Frieza. You have options where you're still able to get his active skill or his entry activated right away. But why did they give him this then is what I don't understand, because he's essentially restricted to 2 categories, maybe 3. But without having all his super bosses, allies around, movie bosses aren't really able to cushion him the same way, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So, I mean, he's still very good damage, very good to decent tanking. He just taper off a little bit too early on, I think. I think if he had the 5 turns right here, he would be still number 2 pretty easily, but since he does fall off a little bit early on, can get caught, and now that Movie Boss is pretty much about to be like one of the best teams of the game. Like, I haven't looked at what Int Broly's Easy A details are, but I did see that they got revealed the other day over on Twitter. So imagine that he's going to be good. We're going to get like Tech Broly's Easy A, and all of those are units who buff a lot of categories. Super Bosses isn't one of them. So having to wait until turn 6 to get this to protect the rest of the team. Like right now, like Movie Bosses kind of needs this team protection ability on turn 4, on turn 5. Not turn 6, you know what I mean? I don't know. I might be... no, I'm comfortable leaving him there. So, top 3 time. Now, this is a unit who I have changed my opinion on a lot. This is the trio. We just spoiled who number 2 was. The trio. So, when I first pulled them and I used them a little bit, I actually thought these guys kind of sucked, because they got caught super early on and very often in that brand new Broly event. I know that brand new Broly event is actually designed to make Super Saiyan Gokus look worse, but I tried running them at a bunch of other events and they just kept getting cooked over and over and over again. But that was because I was running them on movie heroes. Once I started running just their own leader skill, things started to become very different. This is by far the best support unit, I would say, in the game, potentially in this game's history. So, they have 3 key and 200 stats at the start of turn, which is very, very good. They are one of the best orb changers in the game. They just generically create their own physical orbs. This is a unit who really wants to get their own orbs, though, because of how crazy their support is. So every time they get 3 key, so essentially you get them 3 orbs, or just give them 1 physical orb, they're getting an extra 30% defense for the rotation, which is quite good. They have 15% damage reduction just generically, which isn't great. But when you stack that on top of their incredibly high defense, and if it's a super attack, they temporarily, they temporarily get 30% damage reduction against super attacks specifically. This unit actually can be quite tanky. Now, I've seen some conflicting opinions. So I've seen some people say that they actually get their defense at the starter turn. They don't have to get hit for it to proc. I've seen other people say that it does have to get proc. This is one of those reasons why I wish Dokkan would unify their card text, kind of like what Yu-Gi-Oh does, how like we have problem-solving card text, where, you know, you have like your win-if clauses, because there are certain units who have to get hit before they actually get their defense, so they get hit really hard that first attack, and then the next attack they're able to tank. And then you have other units who just the first time that they get hit, and their defense activates at the same time, therefore they take no damage. This is a unit, though, who I haven't honestly been able to tell if they get it both at the same time or not. Because if I put them into slot 1, it's because it's up against an easier enemy where I feel very confident putting them in slot 1. Or if I put them in slot 2, normally that's in a much later on part of the fight. They're able to get some supers up at that point. They have their own support up or the other support rotation. So I haven't entirely been able to tell. So if anyone can like definitively tell me, I mean, again, probably in the comment section of this video it'll be devised, because I've seen both sides of the argument, people saying it's the same thing. Again, until we have like some like definitive problem-solving card text, I'm not personally able to tell. But overall, just very, very solid kit. These guys do some insane damage, by the way. These guys can actually outperform Broly in terms of their damage, just because of how consistent they are. So they have their 18 key, and then they launch 2 additional supers each that has a 50% chance of being a super as long as you get them to 18 key, which is super easy to do because, again, they create their own orbs, and they get extra key spheres, or extra key per type key sphere obtained. Super, super good. And then right here, this is where they kind of get, like, pretty nutty. So there's other movie bosses, or all-out struggle category ally in the same turn. This is where they get the 15% damage reduction, and then they give all allies 77% defense. If you're running 2 of this guy, you're giving both rotations an extra 154% defensive support. That's like by far the most defensive support I think we've ever seen on a unit, and it's easy to get. You just have to run them on one of these 2 categories, and even still, it's not like the full rotation has to be it. It's just 1 ally. So if you run this guy, and then you just have one all-out struggle category ally on each rotation, or one movie hero ally on each rotation, you're cooking. Or you can have those be your floating units. It doesn't matter. This is so free and easy to get, and it's insane. Because it's not like you need, it's not like a Majin Buu Angel SSJ3 restriction inherently. Because Angel SSJ3, he needs one on the rotation at all times, and it specifically has to be one category. You have, not only do you have 2 separate category options, but if you just have 3 all-out struggle floaters, you can still use them on all these different teams, and they can all get all those buffs, and vice versa. Although this is a unit who you pretty much want to keep on rotation, and the same thing with like movie heroes. Most movie hero characters are really good, but this guy is like 170%, like all-out struggle, Super Saiyans, and Power of Wishes is insane. It says 200%, like Connected Hope and Movie Heroes is a little bit weaker, but just having Power of, like, you have characters like Bulma, you have characters like Tech Ultimate Gohan, you have SSBE, you have Evoken, 2 of the units we actually talked about earlier on this list. For TURs, you have Tech Vegeta, you have so many powerful units, you have Gogeta. Very, 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 very good 170. So just again, the 200% is where he loses a little bit of his steam. And he doesn't have access to, like, Beast Gohan, which is a little bit upsetting, but it's not, like, the worst case ever. Because you don't really need Beast Gohan to inherently protect this character, because this character is just kind of protecting the whole team with their stupid levels of support. They have a very good 18 key, where they're getting 30% attack and defense for 3 turns, and then they also give support, an extra 30% attack and defense support to all superclass allies. And then right here, they actually have one of these super attack effects where, yeah, they get no defense, but they're essentially buffing the team. We have so many fights that you're able to debuff. This unit is doing insane levels of debuff. I would argue only, like, Evoken could potentially debuff a unit as much as this, and I'm specifically talking about LRs. I know that, like, Tech Ultimate Gohan greatly lowers enemy attack, so if you got the 4 super turn with him, he would actually debuff a little bit more, but that's neither here nor there. Very, very good. And these guys have a standby, which is quite easy to activate. You just have to activate it when HP is 77% or less at any time, or 5th turn from start of battle. Not first appearance, start of battle. And then they have the standby mechanic, and this, again, probably the best standby mechanic in the game. Each time they get hit, they get 1 charge, or they get 3 charges, excuse me. They get 2 charges per physical key sphere obtained, and then they get 1 charge for non-physical key sphere obtained. I don't think this includes them. So I think if they collect a bunch of physical orbs, they don't get a bunch of charges. I may be wrong. I'm trying to remember back to last night. I don't remember if they get charges for their own orbs, but they kind of make up for it because they get the 3 charges per hit received. So let's go ahead and look at the standby. This standby is essentially unkillable. You only have it for 3 turns, which is a little bit unfortunate. It's not as good necessarily, not as good, quotations. It's better, but it's worse in other ways. As opposed to a unit like the Buu Duo. So, this unit's not able to attack, so if you're using them for their support and their defensive capabilities. They get very high stats at the start of turn, 259% attack and defense, and they have the guaranteed guard. They change all int key spheres into rainbow key spheres. They get 2 key per physical key sphere obtained, and then they get 1 key sphere for a non-physical key sphere obtained. They get 30% defense when receiving an attack for every 3 key sphere. That was English. And then when key is 24, they get an extra 59% damage reduction. So it's very easy to make this unit like the most tanky unit in the game. You can do this on turn 1, you can do this on turn 5, you can do this whenever you really need to. And then they also, again, just give out stupid levels of support. They give 20% defense per key sphere obtained, and then all allies get 7% defense for 2 turns per physical key sphere obtained. So if you collect, I don't know, 10 physical key spheres, you're giving 70% support for 2 turns. Really, really good. And then they have the 2 finish attacks, and they get an extra 100% attack when performing the finish attack. And then if you launch the weak one, which is with 40 or less charges, which I've never seen happen because it's so easy to get this guy key spheres, he gets 15% attack per key sphere obtained, and then he does ultimate damage. Or if you're able to get to 41 or more, 20% attack per key count, and then they do super ultimate damage. Now, from my experience, from what I've seen, this unit's attack, I mean, it does good damage, but it's not as impressive as several other standby attacks that we've seen. Because even though he has the 259% attack at the start of the turn and the 100% here, like, again, let's look at the Buu Duo. The Buu Duo, they get no attack at the start of turn, but they get 500% attack when performing the finish attack. So even though this unit can get more charges than that unit very easily, you're stuck with him for only 3 turns as opposed to 5, and then you're not getting as much damage on it. It does still do a lot of damage, just from my experience. I haven't been, like, wowed by the damage by any means, and I've gotten above, like, 90% charges. I think the most I've seen it do is 16 million, which I know saying 16 million is, like, a lot, but not compared to what I've seen the Boo Duo do. The Boo Duo, their damage is way more impressive. Then you go back to the base form after you do it. So if you go back to the base form, I mean, these guys are still incredible, and then you can just do it all over again with your other friend leader. So I do feel very confident in putting them here. I could actually see them potentially move up with dupes. But as it stands right now, I only have them 55%. I don't think that their standby attack is as crazy as a lot of people like to say it is, but their damage is very incredible. They just, I mean, everything about them is just incredible. But I do think that there are 2 units who just outperform them. So I still think Beast is number 1, but I could see an argument for all 3 of these units being up here. It just ultimately comes down to what you value as a player a little bit more. So let's go ahead and talk about Broly first. So Broly is probably one of my favorite designed characters in the game right now. So you could transform into Legendary Super Saiyan turn 1 if you want to, or you could have this unit who can attack on his first turn, has 90% damage reduction and guard in slot 1, or 70% damage reduction, and then he gives just a stupid amount of support to extreme class allies in slot 2 or 3. So I've even seen some people keep this guy in slot 2 for multiple turns, wait until turn 5, turn 7 even, before they transform with him, because yes, he only has his damage reduction for his first couple of turns, for his first turn actually, he always has the guard. So if this is what you really value from the character, all this extra support that he gives right here, you can keep him in this form, and as long as he doesn't get tagged by like a super attack, he's fine. He will take damage against normals, because just having 200% and guard, he's not going to take like a ton, but like normals will still definitely hurt him. Or you can transform with him right away. You can give him 1 support turn. It doesn't really matter. But you transform, and then you get the big boy Broly. He's so powerful, he even broke the webpage. There it is. So this guy, starter turn 3 key, 260 stats, insane. He has 50% damage reduction for his first 3 turns. He actually has 76. When you put him into slot 1, he gets an extra 200% defense and guard before he performs an attack. He gets built up super easily. For each attack that he does, he gets 5 key, or up to 5 key, and up to 50% chance to crit. He launches an additional that has a high chance of becoming a super after he gets hit by an attack. He launches a guaranteed additional super in slot 2 or slot 3. He gets an extra 3 key and performs a basically guaranteed crits, because this stacks on top of that. When there's a Pure Saiyan or Earthbred fighter category enemy, keep in mind all the difficult fights right now are up against either Earthbred fighters or Pure Saiyan category enemies. Like Goku to Frieza is the only one that isn't, and I guess Cell Max. But the new hardest fight in the game is surely going to come during the celebration. I don't know necessarily what movie it'll be. If it's like, if we do get movie 10, it would be like the Family Kamehameha units are going to be the hardest. Those are all Earthbred fighters, Gohan, Goten, and Goku. So this unit is just super good for this meta specifically. Once we move back towards, like, you know, more extreme class enemies, he will certainly fall off a little bit, but you don't necessarily need this to be good. It's just like an extra bonus that specifically helps him in today's meta. And then he gets an attack break when his key is 24. So why does that matter so much? Well, number one, it's an AoE, and he greatly stacks attack. So he's doing what Majunior's active skill does. You know how like good Majunior's active skill was last year, how it was an AoE that attack broke every enemy? You get to do this literally every turn. Because getting this guy 24 key is not hard when he has all of this and potentially this up. And he has some pretty good key links if I'm not wrong. Yeah, it's like Shocking Speed, Prepare for Battle. Yes, Berserker. So it's not very hard to get this guy 24 key in the slightest. He is a perfect slot 1 unit. I would actually say, like, this is like when people think of like Angel SSJ3 Goku's performance, they think of this, what this unit actually does. Because this unit, you can put him into slot 1 and he's literally untouchable. Even once he loses his extra 20% damage reduction, having the 200% defense and the guard before he performs an attack plus 50% damage reduction, that's essentially what like SSBE does on his revive turn. You know what I mean? Untouchable in slot 1, does just extra damage in slot 2. This guy has a perfect linking partner with Dragon Ball Super Broly. You put this guy slot 1, Dragon Ball Super Broly slot 2. That has to be the most powerful rotation in the game. Like, I feel very strongly about that. Especially since they both have AoEs. If we do get like a hard AoE boss, that's going to be the most devastating rotation in the game. Now, he doesn't offer a lot of support in his base form, but he does have this. He has this active skill which can be performed upon entering his next attacking turn, which permanently, by the way, gives him 3 key and 26% to his attacking defense. So his stats just fly through the roof. The entire fight, he's going to be stacking his attack. He does insane damage. Multiple attacks during the turn. can basically be doing guaranteed crits. Other than that, it's a 50-50 whether or not you do or you don't. I think he's insane, but since he's not able to protect teams, that is why I still think Beast Gohan is number 1. So Beast Gohan, he still leads the best team in the game, which is Superheroes. I mean, that can change with movie bosses potentially if they get a lot of buffs, but as it stands right now, I would say Superheroes is just the best team in the game. This guy, for his first 5 turns, he's completely untouchable. Later on into fights, he can certainly get caught, especially if we do have some of these longer fights, but he just locks down slot 1 so hardcore. 250 to stats, guaranteed guard. He gets stronger each time he gets hit within the turn. He has the attack all mechanic. Now, he does probably have the, by far, I would say, like, by far the worst attack all mechanic, because he just gets an extra 158% defense. He does get guaranteed crits for the turn, but that doesn't necessarily matter, because if you put him into slot 3 the turn that you activate this, you're already getting, like, the guaranteed crits, because he gets crit each time he gets hit. Not the biggest deal out there. They could, like, this could have maybe been, like, a heal or something. Could you imagine if it applied, like, the Sensu Bean effect, where, like, it got rid of all stuns, seals, and, like, attack locks? That would make this insane. Or if he was, like, immune to stuns, or if he was immune to seals, because you can get all the attack, all the crit in the world. If you get tagged by a stunning super attack before he's able to attack, it doesn't really make a huge difference. But he also is a stacking character. He does greatly stack attack on both his 12 and 18 key. He gives himself defense for 4 turns on the 18 key variety. He does have an attack break in of himself if there's a Piccolo on the rotation. He just has like a very good link set. He's very generic. He doesn't have any real restrictions anywhere into his passive. I still think he is number 1, but again, I could potentially see an argument for any of these 3. This unit, like, after really using them a lot, has, like, rocketed into, like, the stratosphere with how good I think that they are. So I think, like, if we did something like this is how I would rank all the units in terms of, like, how powerful I think they are on, like, a category thing. Like, I think something like that would be like, this is like a tier, this is a tier, this is a tier, this is a tier. I would say something along those lines, but again, let me know what you think about this list. I do just think, like, I don't have a lot to say about Beast, just because I still think Beast is that guy. The top 3, though, like, if I really could see this, I could potentially even see this, because their support is just insane. If they did a little bit more damage, maybe, I would feel more comfortable just going ahead and saying that, like, yeah, Beast has been dethroned. But I don't know, because he doesn't necessarily have, like, the perfect linking partners or, like, the team setups. Because, like, again, he does lead the best team, but because he leads the best team, his attack all mechanic isn't necessarily needed. You know what I mean? Like, if we're looking at, like, his categories, there shouldn't be any units on, like, superheroes. Let's just pull up superheroes. Like, this is a unit who can just dodge a super. This is a unit who can just dodge a super. If they're in Gamma 1, they should be able to eat it after they super. If you're able to debuff, this is a unit who can eat it. This is a unit who can dodge. This is a unit who can dodge. These are dodging units. So, like, superhero doesn't necessarily, like, need top tier, like, protection that way. Same thing with, like, Bondmaster and Disciple, I would imagine. Like, yeah, this is a unit who can, like, pretty much fend for himself. But what I mean by that is, like, you're not going to be at full HP and going to 0. Like, you may still take damage, but you're not going to go from full to taking 0 in any of these instances. Now, if he led just, like, 3 weak categories, yeah, but, like, his active, like, again, it is the worst by far. It does protect the team, but he's on just, like, such a strong team setup, it isn't always the most needed. Like, if Broly had that, like, if Broly could do what he's doing and protect movie bosses as it is right now, like, my movie bosses team, I'm running LR Gold and Frieza, and I'm hoping I'm killing a fight before he runs out of damage reduction. That's a team who could actually really use a team protection mechanic. And I know you're going to say Cell Max, but again, I already discussed why I think Cell Max is a little bit weaker, because if you're not running him specifically on Artificial Life Form or Super Bosses. And then this unit, again, like, they do so much damage, though. Do I want to put them above Broly, actually, and say that they're number 2? I'm gonna leave it as it is right now. And again, I can always change my mind later on, or let me know what you guys think about this list. Do you think I'm crazy? Do you agree with, like, my takes? I don't really, like, looking at it right now, these 3 units are the only ones that I'm really questioning their position, but I feel very comfortable at you at 10. I feel comfortable at you at 9, you at 8, you at 7, you at 6, you at 5, and you at 4. But the top 3 is a little bit dicey. So I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you guys think. But that is going to be all for this time, guys. I've been the SweetBro27. I'm a variety Twitch streamer and an up-and-coming PNG YouTuber trying to make it big in the world. I have a Twitter, a Twitch, a TikTok, and a YouTube, the links to which can all be found in the description of this video. And while you're down there, don't forget to like, subscribe, share me around, and leave me a comment, positive, negative, or indifferent. I would love just any sort of interaction I can get from you guys. But yeah, that's going to be all for now. So, as always, I've been the Sweeper27, and I am signing off.